We've got ourselves a bona fide mystery tonight. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I'm excited to explore this one with you guys tonight because when this first showed up, I was like, all right, yeah, I know exactly what this is. And then the further I dug into it, the less certain I was. This is an ES-355 like none other that I've seen. This thing is so special, I'm not even going to call it an ES-355. I'm going to call this one my ES-35L5. Because did you notice we have an L5's neck on this 355? So let's do a little bit of history just to catch you up in case you're not familiar with the 3 family. When we think of a center block semi-hollow in Gibson territory, we're thinking about the 335. It has some fancy appointments, but nothing too crazy. You just have single banded binding, and depending on what era, you either have dots or small blocks. From there, you can step up to a 345, which gets 3-ply binding on the front, which is really cool. You get the upgraded inlays into split parallelograms. Sometimes you get a veritone at that stage. Just kind of depends when it was made. But then the 355 is like the Les Paul custom version of a 335, where you get the ebony fretboard, the block inlays, all that good stuff, including 7-ply binding along the front, 3-ply on the back, and 5 on the headstock with your custom emblem. Again, sometimes you get a veritone, sometimes not. So now let's come over here. Well, we've got the 7-ply binding on the top. We have a figured maple cap. I gotta remember, with these guitars, they're a maple poplar maple sandwich, so getting a figured top or back is not necessarily too incredibly special. You can find them from time to time, but the top's pretty nice on this. But check out the back. I didn't see very good photos of this when I bought it. I actually like the back better than the front. We do have a veritone on this. We've got a Maestro Vibrola. You don't find that all the time on these, but it is possible. But it's got an ABR1 bridge, so that means this is probably a specific year reissue. But where this one changes is the neck. You see, we get that little fancy curly Q. I'm not sure what the proper term is for that. It's basically the Gibson open book headstock just at the bottom. But now check out all the 100 million different layers of binding. You get binding and purfling along it, and you still have fret nibs. But if you look closely at the inlays, I do believe this is abalone. It's just kind of similar to what they were using in the 70s, where it doesn't have like crazy coloring in it like it mainly does today. But not only do we have crazy binding on the top, you also have it along the edges of the fretboard, where you get that whole multi-layered thing. Next up, check out our headstock. It actually has the L5 chalice, sometimes called the flower pot. You get a beautiful flower coming out of a fancy pot. Call it whatever you want. But then we get Grover Imperial tuner tips. As if a 355 wasn't fancy enough, they've really amplified it. But now flipping over to the backside, we already talked about the figuring back here. That's all fine and dandy. But we get a fancy heel cap, which is basically just binding for the heel of the neck. And then this bad boy has a 5-piece maple neck. So 3 pieces maple, 2 likely walnut. But here's where things get exciting. It's a Custom Shop Original. Gibson utilized the Custom Shop Original decal as well as Custom Shop Edition from approximately late 1982 until very early 1994. I've always been fond of these decals. What's important to know is these are not Custom Shop produced guitars, because the Custom Shop, as we think of it as a completely separate division, did not open until late 1993. So there are some late 93, early 94s that might still have them, but generally speaking, it was made on the same production line as everything else. They might have just got some special attention. But Custom Shop Edition meant it was a limited edition run. Custom Shop Original typically means it was a one-off custom order. So that's pretty exciting for this one. But now check out our headstock. This thing was advertised as a 1990 355, so that was exciting to me. So look at the serial number. I was just like, oh yeah, the guy accidentally took the wrong one. It's actually a 1991, but it's production number 1? That's pretty cool. Now, it is important to note that just because you have a production number 1, that doesn't actually mean it was the first one. There is a 000 digit. And normally anymore, I don't reach out to people who are selling stuff to give them more information, because most times they just want to fight you about it, and that's not what I'm trying to do. But this one was different. I wanted to strike up a conversation with the seller, because there's one more thing that's special on this. Did you guys catch it? Our pickup covers are embossed with the Custom Shop logo. Where have we seen this before? It's the Gibson Old Hickory Les Paul. As far as I'm aware, the earliest that they would use this was around 1996, 1997. Because remember, the custom shop was brand new. They didn't have their fancy logo designed instantaneously. It took them a while, and they wanted to figure out what they were doing. Because the last time Gibson did something like this was in 1972, like we documented on that really cool SG. Now, those were actually a deeper embossing. Maybe you would call this a light engraving. It doesn't stand out as much, but this was a very shortly lived thing. So I reached out to him. I was like, are you sure those pickups are original? Have you ever actually taken a look at the solder joints or anything like that? Because for this being from 1991, it doesn't really make sense that those pickups would be there because the custom shop didn't even formally exist yet. And his response was, George Gruen custom ordered this. It's never been touched. Check the serial number. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, I already looked at the serial number, but I'm so glad he told me to, because I understood there was a lot of zeros in here, but I missed something very important. 9000. The way you read a Gibson serial number in this format, which was introduced in mid-1977 and only had a few variations in 1994 and 2014 through early 2019, is year, day, year, and the last 3 and or 4, depending if it was mid-2000s or later, is your batch and production number. So this one reads 1991, production number 1, built on the 0th day? What? That's when I went from, all right, I'm just going to let this one go, to, yeah, we need to document this thing. How on earth can you have a guitar that was built on a day that doesn't exist? Here's my theory. This was a special piece. Maybe it was number 1 or 2 of the custom ordered guitars from 1991, and they did a special serialization like this, so they instantly knew, oh yeah, that's one of those special ones that we're working on. We can rule out that it's a Gibson because just feeling this, I mean, it's real easy to tell a Gibson from a real Gibson once you know how a real Gibson feels, how they make them. I can guarantee you this is made of the good stuff. However, we still have the mystery of the pickups. I did reach out to Gibson via email, didn't get anything back from them, because in 1989 and later, they usually have some sort of a record, and they can be a great resource. Anything before that, they're just doing a Google search like you. Because who knows, it might end up being that this is a mid-90s, and they just started it around 1991. Or maybe I am correct, somebody just wanted to throw fancy pickups in their guitar. Because as far as case and case candy goes, this is definitely a 90s era case. Ooh, this is actually a really good hint for us. This is pre-block, so that means it is early 90s. You can also tell because you have what's called the pink blanket shroud before they switch it to the thin satin sheet. I used to love these cases, but anymore I hate them because they just smell like glue and it makes your guitar smell like that. Not a big fan anymore. But it still has the combo lock. It's never been touched. But unfortunately, 1990 is before any COA or anything like that. But oh, it's a darn shame that thing fell off. I love it when pickguards still have the original thing over it. However, this almost appears to maybe have gone to a different guitar, unless they didn't have a big enough sheet to cover it, because it lines up as far as the pickups go, but not for the whole thing. Otherwise, just paperwork for our case combo lock. So, we've got ourselves a mystery that maybe an endoscope can help us solve. Let's go ahead, throw it on the workbench, take it apart, see if we can find any fancy markings, and then, most importantly, hear how it sounds. Ooh, not good news, my friends. It's authentic, but heavily modified is unfortunately the truth. So as I was suspecting, this is way too early for these pickup covers. But I wanted to give the guy the benefit of the doubt that, okay, maybe they were prototyping it. This is a really special feature. But as I took the pickups out, at first I was like, ooh, those solder joints do actually look good, but what on earth is this? So early 90s history, it's around 1992, 1993 that they switch over into the now currently still used Gibson USA base plate. It's embossed on it. That's what we've come to know and love. But in the very early 90s, you still have the patent number on it. However, I've never actually personally seen this before. A 490R sticker in this really reflective silver coloring. I was willing to write that off as an anomaly, but look at this, 4-conductor wiring. You don't normally see that at a Gibson at this time, especially on a model that does not have push-pull pots or push-push, something for coil splitting. Because I don't think you need that for the Veritone, unless this is not a Veritone. Maybe it's actually different and it's like coil splitting. I guess we'll have to find that out. So that was a couple of anomalies. But then our bridge pickup was a matching 490R. Now, you gotta remember, this was actually a common pickup set. They might not have introduced the 498T yet, or many studios actually came stock with 2 of those. But this is all the same stuff, and again, the solder joints look good. I was just gonna leave it at that. But as I put this back in, I noticed something looks strange. I've been bamboozled! Covers aren't actually soldered onto the pickup at all. What you're seeing is the original solder joint where someone has broken it and just put new pickup covers on. You can also see where somebody's like bent them out to fit this particular pickup because the spacing was ever so slightly off. So that confirms to me these are not the original pickup covers. However, they might actually still be the original pickups. You can also see they put a little spacer right here on the bridge pickup to help it be fully secured. As far as our readings within the circuit, 8.14 k ohms in the bridge position. Nothing in the neck. And then the middle, that's not acting right. Okay, let's see if this is a normal veritone. That's not a good sign. But who knows, maybe the electronics are just weird and they actually work when you plug it in. Some guitars are like that. Alright, I figured this out. It's a stereo guitar. It needs a special stereo jack. A lot of the modern day stereos I've had are actually dual mono, so I've never ran into this issue before. But there's actually 2 ways to plug it in. There's all the way down and then this kind of middle position. That's what you want for this, because if you plug it all the way in, the neck will work. It's just at like half volume or something weird. So I find this works on that. So both pickups together, 4.03 k ohms. Just your bridge, about 8.01. And then the neck, 7.82. So that answers that. Not really that big of a deal because I was already expecting some monkey business going on over there. And if it actually ended up being original, I was just going to count that as a blessing. However, we're going to go a bit out of order today. Do you notice something that you would not find on a factory first quality custom ordered guitar? Double pickguard screws. Let's check out this first tortoiseshell one. Where does it line up? Okay, it's the top screw hole. What did we just talk about? That original plastic in the case that did not fit it. This is a replaced pickguard. The construction of it is just a little bit off from how Gibson does it. Now don't get me wrong, the construction of this pepperoni pickguard's actually pretty cool. The binding's not completely flush on the back, but you can tell this is real celluloid stuff. But when I took it off, you might notice, hey, our bracket's not attached anymore. And it looks like it was trying to be attached in a few different areas. Over the years, it has come undone. It was just secured by what looks like a sticky rather than being melted onto it like they normally do. That's actually a wooden block. But that tells me this did not ship with the long guard pick guard. It would have shipped with a shorter one that the plastic in the case actually went onto. It was probably celluloid as well. And if you look closely, you can see some mild discoloration in the finish right here where it's a little bit more ambered. So what do celluloid pickguards do? They off-gas. What happens to all your gold hardware? It turns green. It eats it. It'll also mess with your frets, but usually you can clean those off just fine. So that explains why a new pickguard, why new pickup covers. It probably happened within the first couple of years, and they were like, hey, why don't we replace it with something cool? So yep, makes sense. But now the real kicker, and the only thing I'm going to have to bring up with on the seller, this vibrato, not original. What did I find under here? Plugged Bigsby holes in the top. This likely left the factory with that. Now, at least we didn't find stop bar studs. So yeah, it left with a vibrato. Somebody just installed the Maestro, which unfortunately requires not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new holes in the top, but they installed it improperly at first and had to do another 4. And they wanted to do their best to absolutely hide this from anybody checking it by essentially welding that top piece to it so you could not remove it. When I started to remove the side screws from that, and they were all short and had this like weird black stuff on them, I knew something was up. Because those secure over here, and it was just not budging at all. I had to get my suction cup to get that thing off. But somebody definitely did not want you finding that out. But when it was installed, and I looked under here and saw that, I was like, yeah, something's up there. I need to fully check to make sure it wasn't routed for a Kaler or something crazy. So super cool Maestro vibrato from 1990. No. But again, the original Bigsby was likely tarnished from the off-gassing pickguard, or they just happened to like the Maestro vibrato better, so they installed it. But what's kind of cool is to hide it even further, they cut this off from the Bigsby. That way it would be hiding all the Bigsby holes down here too. Now you could say, hey, how do you know the custom shop just didn't change their mind on this one-off? I highly doubt it. I mean, is there a very small, minuscule chance? If it wasn't for the fact of these covers being way later, I'd be willing to believe it. But this screams modified afterward. Well, that's as far as I got so far. Now let's check out our cavities. Because when some things have been replaced, you gotta scrutinize everything. Is it a completely new neck on this body? Thankfully, I think we can accurately say that this is the original neck because I believe the tenons on the other necks are like vastly different coming into here. So that looks good to me. That's really cool seeing the neck come in like that. But remember, semi-hollows are historically very ugly guitars in the cavities for Gibson. But look how ridiculously clean this one is. Zero splintering at all, even within the spruce bracing. But here you can see the maple poplar maple top with the spruce, and then it looks like we're rocking a maple center block, and then you've got that on the backside as well. It's a Veritone, so you got this. They didn't fully secure that either, but I've definitely seen that before in Gibson land. Everything's just really clean here. But now let's break out our endoscope to see if we can find anything else. Well, first off, we can see even the backside of the maple on the interior was figured, so they definitely wanted to take some time to make this thing beautiful. But as far as up here around the horn on the base side, I'm not seeing any additional markings. Here's our center block we were just talking about, and you can see that spruce bracing along the underside of that block. But everything looks good here. Unfortunately, there is no sound hole sticker though. Now going inside the treble side F-hole, we see more of the figuring, and up by the treble side cutaway, get through those wires. That's kind of cool how they put just two individual kerfings right there, completely independent of the other ones, because you can see they're a very different color. But again, we can see our kerfed edge, lots of glue going on. And now we can look down here around our electronics. And there we can see our Veritone with a whole bunch of stuff going on. Now I know it's common to shield that stuff off additionally, but I don't think I've ever seen it wrapped around the pot like that before. I mean, the solder work doesn't look too bad. The pot stylings appear to be about right, but unfortunately I don't have enough clarity on this endoscope to make out any of the pot codes. But there we can see a capacitor. That's right for this era. There's some more codes, but they're covered. So maybe original electronics. It's possible somebody cleaned it up with something else. Unfortunately, outside of taking it out, there's no way to know for sure. But at this point, does it really matter? We've already installed different trem systems and have a whole bunch of holes in the guitar. It's beautiful, and I do believe it to be a one-off, but something definitely happened to this and they had to modify it. But now let's look at the rest of the guitar. So first thing I noticed when I took this thing out of the case is all this finish checking right here. We'll definitely have to blacklight it, but some movement in the neck heel is not that uncommon, as well as natural finishes doing this finish checking. In fact, we documented a really cool new old stock gorgeous natural Les Paul custom, and it had very similar checking to it. But check out this fancy neck. This is what made me fall in love with this example. You just gotta love the ultra fancy guitars. They're just obnoxiously beautiful. So you get a single band of binding right here that forms your fret nib, but then you have a wide black, thin white, thin black, thin white on the interior of the fretboard, and then ebony and what appears to be abalone blocks. I measure 1.7 inches at the nut, increasing to 2.08 at the 12th, 0.82 first fret neck depth, and 0.92 by the 12th. It's definitely more of a C-shaped neck profile, but a little bit on the slimmer side. Another fun thing is you get the tortoiseshell colored side marker inlays. You gotta shine the light on it to see it though. I can verify that for you right here. It's closest to a 12-inch fretboard radius, although I think it's closer to 13. But now we've got a cool headstock. So early 90s still utilizes some of the older 70s and 80s looking headstock veneers, and it's possible that this was just left over, because that's definitely more akin to them. But cool flower pot chalice. But you will notice around some of your tuners, you can see some lifting of the lacquer. That is very common in the 90s, so it doesn't really surprise me at all. Thankfully, none of it has really started to super crack yet, but you can definitely see some wear along the edges of the headstock. And you can see some more lacquer lifting right here underneath our truss rod cover, but the truss rod is fine. It actually never appears to have been used. And let me tell you, this thing badly needed an adjustment. It's had these flat wound strings on it forever, but the cover actually reads stereo. Here's a look at our bridge. Now this actually is an error correct piece. However, to verify that it's the original one to this guitar, I don't think I can do. Because remember, the pickguard off-gassing, it's going to ruin your bridge too. So it would make sense that somebody might have replaced it with something period correct. Another thing I noticed while putting it on is it doesn't 100% fit these posts, like there's a little bit of wiggle room to it. So then, as I was restringing it, I thought, you know what? I bet these Grover Imperials aren't original either. That's another reason why some bubbling around your tuners can occur, because you put a different style tuner that has different pressures. We'll have to look on the back. Honestly, feeling it, they do feel newer than 90s. But we'll check that out on the back, and maybe a Grover expert can get back to us. Oh, and I also found out another reason why they epoxied this cover on here and why they cut the screws short is the holes don't line up. So you can't actually properly install this plate. It's been a while since we've had a mystery that just kicks my butt and it's like, no, not what you thought it was at all. But it still is special at the same time. It's just a bit of a bummer. But that should be about all the surprises we find on this thing. The rest, we just have to appreciate its beauty. Like, my goodness, I just love the back on this. But here you can see that plate I was talking about when it's installed, as well as that cool 3-ply binding that we were talking about over here on the back. But no back control plates on this one. It's all fished through their cavities. Let's kind of shocked to not see another screw hole for the different pickguard, but they must have lined up okay in that aspect. But when we get to our fancy heel cap, you'll actually notice that is 3-ply as well. And then this neck does not photograph well, but in person, yeah, that thing is very evenly flamed. And not gonna lie, this really scared me at first, but no, it's not a crack, it's just a wood grain mark in a very unfortunate location. And then yes, you do have a bunch of finish checking along the high stress areas, nothing to worry about in my opinion. High stress areas like around the nut, as well as like by the heel joint, as we were talking about earlier. There we go, that's another good spot to show the neck dancing. This is some really nice premium maple used. But there's our custom shop original decal. And then take a good look at these Grovers. In my opinion, I think this probably shipped with Grovers, but they wanted to upgrade it to get more goldy looking ones. And if you're going to be fancifying this thing, Imperials are the way to go. But there is that weird serial number built on the 0th day of 1991, production number 1. But when it comes to our blacklight test, we need to look at this with utmost scrutiny. So far, everything on the neck seems to check out, because you gotta be careful. There are unscrupulous people that actually sell these decals. So just because you have that on a guitar doesn't mean it's necessarily original. But here's a look at this side of the neck joint, and a look at this side. And I suppose a heel cap would be a good way to hide that, but I don't see any finish touch-up in that area, unless the whole thing was refinished at the same time. But I think we can all agree that this maple was a little bit lighter, so I think it makes sense that this appears to glow a little bit more. But remember, this is a binding material. You need to look over past that to here. So far, so good. I was curious about the knobs. They looked about right, but I would agree. That's early 90s historic style, kind of what you would find on some of the Les Paul prehistoric reissues of this era. Neck's looking okay, and the headstock looks good to me. But trust me, this thing is not light. It is just a little over 10 pounds. 10 pounds, 2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these old Gibson 490 pickups sound. So there we go, a very interesting ES-355 from the early 90s. What a journey on this one. You might notice I'm wearing different clothes from most of the review. It's because this was kind of in limbo for a month between me and the seller, because unfortunately it just wasn't described correctly. Thankfully I was able to get all the electronics working again with a proper stereo cable, so yeah, that's my bad, but everything else, yeah, the dealer that sold it to this guy should have had better due diligence in checking all this over. My honest opinion of this guitar has changed a lot now that I have this neck pickup in the middle position, because that's what you want on these style guitars, your nice BB King blues type stuff. That is a very nice sounding neck pickup, but it's kind of interesting. The stereo jack has to be like halfway plugged in for both of the pickups to get the full sound. I don't know if that's normal or not, but hey, I'll take it over not having the neck pickup working at all. So as far as the tones, this is excellent. As far as playability and tuning stability, unfortunately not. When somebody put new hardware on here, I don't think they actually properly set it up as far as the saddles go. But the biggest thing is the original Bigsby that would have been on here has a tension bar in this area, and then it strings up kind of back here. So the guitar was designed with that in mind. Whereas this trem system has a much more shallow angle. So that changes the feel, as well as how these strings can just fall out of your saddles if you're not careful enough. So I'm kind of torn. I do like this. It's a very nice guitar. There's a bit of a troubled history, but now a month later I can kind of look past some of that. But I really think this should be restored to a Bigsby, but I hate that because I love the Gibson Maestro Vibrola. It looks so cool and fantastic. So not exactly the guitar I thought I was buying as far as originality, but it basically just boils down to celluloid pickguards. They destroy guitars, man. All right, troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.